Hello, everyone. Nick Chavez here with Chavez and Valko, your key to immigration solutions. Here with my law partner, Martin Valko. How are you doing, Martin?
I'm doing well. It's Friday, almost the end of the week. Well, we've still got a couple of days to go, as we are never off.
Yeah, getting close to Thanksgiving. Well, friends, before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and like to get the latest immigration news. That definitely helps us. And if you like our content, if you want to be receiving news, just hit that subscribe button and like us and share it. And well, folks, just like last week, as we all know, news broke about the court ruling about the parole in place, PIP. This is the program known as the Keeping Families Together initiative under Biden. And it would have benefited many immigrants. That we're saying 500,000 would have probably would probably helped. And these are immigrants who have they're from mixed status families, and meaning they have children, they have spouses who are U.S. citizens. And this program would have helped them by allowing them to, if approved, it would have allowed them to apply for their green cards here instead of outside the United States. And well, last week a federal judge ruled against the PIP program. It was a pretty relatively quick trial. The judge basically disagreed with the administration and held that the PIP authority was nowhere to be found in the law, even though this PIP authority has been exercised for many years, and we certainly are seeing it with a military PIP. So the judge disagreed and said there's no statutory authority for it and invalidated the program. And the question is, what happens now? What does this mean? And basically, if it means that if you filed your PIP application, USCIS will no longer be processing it or receiving it. In fact, a couple of days ago, USCIS, they went ahead and filed or published some information that I'm putting up here on the screen. And this information indicates that, number one, as we know, they're not going to be receiving or processing these PIP applications in accordance with the ruling. If you have a fingerprint appointment already scheduled, consider it canceled, because they're canceling those applications or those fingerprint appointments, I should say. And the other thing is they haven't given us information on how they're going to handle the applications that were filed. There was a mention of what's going to happen with the government fees, and are they going to refund those? And basically on their website, they just indicated there that that information is forthcoming. So we'll learn more about what happens there, how they're going to roll that out, and how they're going to manage those cases that are already filed. And we'll share that information as soon as we get more information on that. Well, Martin, as we've been talking about this a lot since the elections, this idea about mass deportation, and this was something that was part of Trump's rhetoric to go out and get everyone mass deportation. As you know, that Stephen Miller is an advisor, and that when you hear that seems kind of unrealistic. But we know that's what they want to do. They want to cause fear. It's easier for them to cause fear and have people leave, as opposed to having round up a lot of individuals here, and the cost of that operation is just enormous. It's like in the billions, and it's unrealistic. But that is the intention, right? And we saw that during the prior Trump administration. We did see this approach that they had, where it's deport or put into deportation proceedings anyone that does not have any legal status, which is different from what we are seeing now, which is more of a practical approach. And it's priority enforcement, where you only take in or you place in proceedings those who are really need to be deported, like are undesirable, the ones that have criminal convictions or already have deportation orders. What do you think about this, Martin? How do you think this is going to roll out?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's just instilling fear in people, and I think that worked well during the elections. We had seen it 16 to 20 during Trump 1.0, and you know, I guess you got to brace and get ready and prepare for the worst. It's certainly been discussed that that's what they want to do. It's the mass deportation approach. They're talking about invoking 18th century law that was almost used with an almost war with France, and so all kinds of theories are being floated. We'll have to see what will happen. Generally speaking, we heard something similar in 16 or leading up to the 2016 elections. It was bad, but it wasn't what they promised, that it's going to be as bad, right? That they're going to massively deport people. So we just have to be ready for it, and they will certainly. What I've heard, they will be prioritizing those that have final removal orders, those that have that have been committed crimes, that have been convicted of crimes, and probably some that shouldn't be here. So I think that's going to be the focus. The numbers that I was hearing was somewhere around 300,000 people that potentially will be on that priority list. Now, will that kind of simmer down after that? Who knows, right? But it was the rhetoric that was used that was effective, that got people were fearful of it, and certainly the backers liked it, and so I think that's what's going to happen initially, and then the focus is going to be on your protection program, the temporary protected status. That even the current administration had signaled that certain countries, people from certain countries that were paroled into the U.S. will not get extended, and this was outgoing President Biden who mentioned it for some of the countries. So we've already seen it in Trump 1 that they were going to dismantle the temporary protected status and de-designated countries from that program, which has helped close to 1 million people from countries that were affected by wars, natural disasters. Things were not that great in those countries, and you can point to Lebanon, Ukraine, Haiti, and some other countries. So and this was something that was put in place by then President Bush, who signed it into law, and it was very effective. So we're going to certainly see that. We're gonna see those plans being put forward. I think there's going to be overall difficulty in trying to immigrate through legal immigration. So yes, the rhetoric is, unlawfully present, right? In their words, illegal, but there's going to be certainly some obstacles being thrown in legal immigration, just like we've had with public charge that was brought into legalizing people through adjustment of status and consular processing, where one would had to go through similar applications, like if you're applying for a mortgage, just basically just looking at their life and are they likely to become public charge or are they not. And so that was a pretty burdensome process. You're gonna see more workplace rates, more ICE audits for workplace compliance. Are people that are employed working for employers, are they employment authorized, which in many cases they're not in different industries. So that really hasn't been focused in this past administration, but it's coming back. The no match letters, right? So this is something that we also do at the firm, where we conduct internal so-called soft audits for the employers, just to make sure that the paperwork, the I-9s, the employment authorization verification documentation, is in order. So when ICE does come and picks the company for audit, that at least that is there. And if they will discover some people that are working without authorization, that they are ready and they have plans in place. We're already seeing universities letting their students know to be in the country on January 20th. So they are, and employees as well, H-1Bs and others, to be here, because we don't know, will the travel bans from certain countries, will that be brought back Apparently there are hundreds of executive orders being readied. Would that be something like what we got back in 17 and 18 by surprise? People were in flight, like one of our clients that was in flight, took off with a valid visa, and in flight, the travel ban was enacted. And when the person landed, they were detained. So all those things, whether it's the employers and students, employees, it's coming. That people will have to get ready for. And we're certainly, law firms like ours and other immigration attorneys, now is the time to come in to fully review somebody's immigration history. Often there is records that need to be pulled, criminal records, immigration history. So an analysis is conducted, because that takes months sometimes to get it. So, people want to be ready.
Yeah. And, come January 20th, with all this rhetoric of a massive deportation, people naturally are scared, but it's going to come in, like, as you mentioned some of their approaches, some of the things that they're planning. It's unrealistic that they're going to do that all at once. It's going to come in waves. As far as immigration enforcement, people who have deportation orders, who are currently going to ICE to report, people who are currently in proceedings, or looking at a way to reopen their case, people who are in the system, and that's the low-hanging fruit for them, and that they're going to focus on that. And later on, if they do get more funding, you start seeing raids and more of a expansive effort from them. But we can expect those who have prior deportation orders and who have or are currently reporting to immigration under a supervised release. So those individuals, as you mentioned, now is the time, right? Now is the time to speak with a lawyer. And it takes months to get your records. So sometimes, clients come in the office and they want us to look at their records. It could take 6 months, sometimes even a year to get your records. So it's important that you get that information, because there could be options, right? What can you do now, Martin? I mean, you mentioned a couple of things. You go with a lawyer and or speak with a lawyer, maybe perhaps request records, as I just mentioned. But what other things can you do to protect yourself?
Well, real quick, what I wanted to say is, you mentioned people that are coming in there on order of supervised release, where they come in and check in. And so, if it's after January 20th and you have a check-in date, you might want to speak with the attorney to have a request for stay application that is prepared, that is ready to go, because that takes time. So if somebody comes in and is detained, then of course the legal team has to scramble. And so that's something that you want to have ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's important for people to know right now, despite the rhetoric, I mean, despite this threat of massive deportation, people do have rights. People do have rights. If you've never been in deportation proceedings, if you are arrested or detained, you do have a right to appear in front of a judge. And in some cases, you might even have the right to request relief. It's a way to prevent your deportation. One notable option for clients who've lived here for over 10 years, it's relief that's known as cancellation of removal, which, if you've lived here for over 10 years and you have certain qualifying relatives, such as spouses, children, parents who are U.S. citizens or residents, if you can show hardship on them, and if your record is clean, then it is possible to apply for relief in front of a judge. So when they say mass deportation, they're missing a lot of things in the middle. It's true that those who have deportation orders, they're at risk. We have to look to see how we can reopen those cases. In some cases, we do discover there was some sort of defect in the process, and we have an argument against deportation. In other cases where people have never been deported, They do have rights, as I mentioned. But if you sign off, if you sign away your rights, especially your right to appear in front of a judge, then it's just one fast. It's your fast track for a deportation or voluntary departure in that regard. What other? We've always talked about this concept of know your rights. We are always sharing that information with our clients. It's the common, do not speak. You have the right to remain silent. You do not open doors unless they have a search warrant. What other things our clients can do to prepare?
What type of clients are you thinking about?
Well, individuals who may not have a deportation order.
Well, I mean, what comes to mind is for example, your DACA recipients or TPS recipients that are married to U.S. citizens or they do have U.S. citizen children that could sponsor them for residence. And so, for DACAs in particular, and TPS as well, but you could request an advanced parole, a travel permit that, if granted, a person physically has to leave and then come back and be paroled into the U.S. and they have legal entry, and with that, they are able to apply for adjustment. And just this Wednesday, I went to the local field office with a client who had DACA, who's married to a U.S. citizen and had it for some time, but really it wasn't any kind of pressing issue. And in this particular instance, he also had a grandparent who was not doing well. In fact, is in really bad shape. And so we applied for an emergency advance parole, which is adjudicated locally. And typically when it's when you're applying for it, one of the three grounds, the humanitarian basis, employment or education, you should go through the service center. You mail it, and it takes months. It used to take 8 months. Now it's down to 4 months, which is great. But if there is an emergency reason, then you can go online, you can get it set up. Within a day or two, you get an appointment if they're available at the local field office. And so I was able to accompany our client and advocate for the issuance, for granting of this advance parole, because again, it's a discretionary decision. The supervisor got involved, and they actually were pointing out, well, this medical letter from the doctor doesn't state what's the condition. And so I was there and I was able to point that the person was of a very, very high age, and the person was close to terminal. And so I was able to convince the supervisor to exercise discretion and to grant the advance parole, and the advance parole was granted for a limited time, and so that person, the DACA recipient, will be able to leave and come back. So that's one of the reasons, or one of the ways of preparing, just looking at the options, right? And another one, and you mentioned being ready, and if there is somebody has an order of removal, you really want to be on standby, even the legal team. And back in 2018, when Trump 1.0 was the machine was in place trying to remove people, we built this app called Law Pilot Guardian, and it has your Know Your Rights section where people don't have to have their card or some kind of a handout, but everything's on the app. They can listen to it, they can read it. There are various situations, whether you're in the car, whether you're at the house, whether you're in the workplace, everything's there. You also get notified of any immigration changes, immigration law changes, but most importantly, you have the emergency button. So when you do have a problem, when you get pulled over by police, and especially now in Texas and with Trump taking office, first thing you do, you enable that red button, and as soon as it is activated, your loved ones will get a text message that you have a problem, that you have an emergency. But we, most importantly, as the law firm providing the service, will be able to locate you on the map where you are, and then listen into the conversation, because the app uploads the audio to the cloud, and so we're able to actually determine where you are, who you're with, what's being said, and and then be able to take the next steps based on our intake notes and your case history. And also, once you have the app, we can load it with documents, with notices of representation, with potentially the stay of removal packet, whatever is necessary, you'll have it in your fingertips. So if you're dealing with ICE officer or an officer, you can actually show it to them. You can send it to them. And so, that's really a peace of mind for people.
Yeah, that's it. And that was really helpful to our clients. Like as you said, it was peace of mind for them, and they had a sense that someone was there with them, and they had a lot of use. It has a lot of useful information in different scenarios, at home, at work. If you're driving, what should you do or say? And I would recommend, if you do have it, take a look at it, because it's important to remember, because when it gets to that point, people get nervous and they forget, or they'll sign something, or they'll start to talk. And so this is very important for you to review it regularly. Yeah. We have a question here, and this was one of my questions. One of the questions I had, Alina asked about the future of DACA. She has DACA. What's going to happen with DACA? We certainly have a lot of DACA clients who are wondering the same thing. Currently, DACA is under review. It's, as many of you know, it's being litigated right now. It's before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. There was a ruling at the district court level saying that DACA is unlawful, and that's what's being reviewed. We do not anticipate that we'll have a decision. Well, if we do have a decision sometime soon, we don't think that if it's appealed, we don't think the Supreme Court will look at it until 2026, the way things are going right now. So at the very least, we might have another year, but we get to that point where once it gets before the Supreme Court, we already know how they're going to rule. We're looking at a situation where we have so many individuals who have work authorization, and all of a sudden they don't have any more protections. What are your thoughts?
Well, could you clarify on the current litigation? Because I know you've been tracking it and you've litigated before the Fifth Circuit, so you have some experience even with the current judges there. Is the ruling, the upcoming ruling, will that concern just the newly, I'd say, I'll use redesign program that Biden administration put through, or is it also going to concern the currently, the renewing DACA, since they've had it, since the original program?
Well, it's going to be DACA as we know it, but the regulations, and these are the regulations that were passed. DACA, if you remember, DACA was more of a policy, and that was one of the things that the administration was criticized over, because it didn't go through a rulemaking, and you had all these lawsuits saying that you just can't create rules or laws without giving proper notice. And so the Biden administration did prop up some federal regulations, and that has also been ruled as unlawful. So that's what we're dealing with right now at DACA. We have another question here. Thank you, Alina, for your question. Here we have a question from Stephen. What happens to the custody of U.S. citizen children if a parent is detained? It's a very interesting question. And what are your thoughts on that, Martin?
I think generally, so it comes down to the state law and family law, and I think the agencies get involved that could take temporary custody of the children, because again, it would be, if you're removing a parent, a custodial parent from the household, and there's nobody else to take care of the minors, then they are responsible for it. So In that case, I can see protective services stepping in and that being a coordinated effort with ICE that they would, if they are removing the parents or if they're detaining the parents, that they would have to take custody of the children.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is something that currently what happens is immigration, the ICE officers, they exercise their discretion. So if there are children that if there is a situation where they can see family separation, they really don't want to involve themselves with protective services and all that. So they exercise their discretion and they say, well, we're going to go ahead and issue this notice to you. You just have to appear later at the courthouse. And we might see some of that. I think this talk about mass deportation, it's a lot of public relations to that. But in practice, and especially without funding, they're going to have to rely on some of the priorities and some of the policies that are currently in place that make sense, including if you have a situation where you have the child and a parent, you don't separate them at this moment, you give them notice and they could appear, or you could do something where you're trying to find another person that can take care of the child and the person's processed and released on their own recognizance. So I think it'll take a while before we get to that point, especially when we're talking about these camps that they're talking about, establishing all that and getting ready for that's going to take a while. I don't think it's going to be something you're going to see on January 20th. Same thing with TPS. What we're seeing with DACA, we're seeing the possible termination of a program that's been around for over 10 years. It's helped a lot of individuals. TPS, there's about 1.5 million people that may all lose their protections if they terminate TPS, and it has profound impacts with the family and their communities and the economy. It'll take a while because most TPS holders have their status up until 2026. One thing that the administration can do is, if they wanted to, they can renew some of that. They can extend that time if they wanted to, and redesignate or renew TPS to extend it beyond 2026. But it's still, we have to wait and see what happens with that. But just like DACA, we're looking at family-based options. If they have a family member who is a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident, and there's a possibility of a family-based petition, the reason why they can't get their green card here is because most of the TPS holders had entered without inspection, but they have an option like DACA to apply for advanced parole. And if they apply for this travel permit, advanced parole, they can leave the country and return. And that would satisfy one of the main requirements to apply for your green card here. So it's a matter of speaking with a lawyer or a legal representative now to form a game plan, because it's not going to, we know that this is not something that the administration, the Trump administration is going to be renewing. So it's best to prepare. So, in closing, and we're going to be doing regular shows, and we're going to be doing some hot takes, and we're also, our information is down below. If you all want to consult about your cases, we'll be happy to speak with you. But in times of change, we've done this before, and we always tell our clients that they're not alone. We're here to help guide you, inform you of your rights, as we're doing now. We wanted to give you that update on Parole in Place, Keeping Families Together initiative. And just like that, we imagine that we're going to be updating y'all on the latest news on cases and immigration policies. And not only that, but we're dissecting them, and we're trying to simplify them and see how you can prepare or adapt to these new policies in accordance with your situation. So we did it before, back in 2017, during Trump's first term. We helped clients navigate through this process despite travel bans and other restrictions, and we'll continue to do so. We have, I'm reminded of a client we had during Trump's first go around. He instituted these travel bans, and it was very difficult to bring people here from certain countries. And we filed a travel waiver, and for our client who was outside, was subject to the travel ban. And it took a while, but we were successful. We brought that person in, and we applied for her green card. And now, a month ago, she became a U.S. citizen. So it was a 7-year journey. And I only say that because it's possible. We just have to be prepared, and we have to anticipate that these restrictions are going to be tighter, and there are going to be more requirements to go through. So it's a matter of preparing your case with your attorney and formulating a defense or a strategy. Do you have any last words, Martin?
Yeah, if you can put that app back on with the QR code again, I just want to stress that Nick is talking about being ready, being prepared, and this is one way of doing it. Back in 2018, when we developed the app, Law Pilot Guardian, it was to give people peace of mind. So if you can pause the video, you can just scan it with a QR code, set up your profile, you'll be registered with our law firm. If you do have a attorney, if you do have a case and you have an attorney who's handling another law firm, you can ask them to provide these services and they can sign up for it. But this particular QR code is to register with us. So I encourage you to do that because you will be prepared. You're going to have information at your fingertips. You'll be ready. You'll be able to even schedule a consultation from it. And so, we've been through this. We've practiced for 20 years. We are ready to help. Don't despair. There are rules in place, there are laws in place, there are procedures in place, and processes in place that have to follow. So, Trump is surrounding himself with a lot of businessmen, with Musk and Vivek and those guys. They understand business. They understand that businesses need employees, and going out there and pulling millions of people from the workforce, right? Ending TPS protections for people that have lawful status like TPS or authorized stay like DACA. It is going to cause a major disruption. So election rhetoric is one thing. We'll have to see what they are willing to implement, but I would guess that it is not going to be as for the most part as draconian, because I think they realize that the widespread implications. Plus, when you throw in the humanitarian factors, separating families, it is just very bad optics. Especially when they're trying to expand the tent and bring in other races and religions and others. It just doesn't look very good. So yes, they got in, they won, they got the trifecta, but I think they will want to continue and continue getting people on board, and that's just not one way of doing that. So again, in short, be ready, be prepared, and this is the way to do that. You're going to have peace of mind. You'll be connected to somebody who cares 24/7, and just scan the QR code and just go through the onboarding, and we'll be happy to help you.
Right. Thank you, Martin. And just to sum up, and you guys can probably sense that we're tired. We're low energy today. It's we're tirelessly working for our clients, and today was no exception. Next time around, I promise we'll be hopped up on something, coffee or whatever. But to reduce it to 2 points, really, for those who think they might have deportations in the past in their history, or have been in proceedings and are worried. The time to talk to an attorney is now. Don't wait, because it's not helpful if you are detained. It makes our job much harder if you're detained. And for those who have never been in deportation proceedings, it's important to figure out what your options might be. But most importantly, what are your rights? What are your rights if that situation happens where you are in front of an ICE officer and they're asking you questions? And that app that we have contains a lot of information on what you should say or do. Thank you, everyone. Till next time.
Have a good weekend. Take care.